Hello, I'm Phil Svitek, 360 Creative Coach, and this episode is a top 10 rundown of the lessons that have benefited me or impacted me most in 2021. And they are all lessons that I have put out in 2021, and so that is what I used as my basis to kind of draw from, right? So I'll include the links to the actual episodes because I won't have time to really dissect each of these 10 things in the way that they're meant to, but that's okay because I already did that in this year, so you can always get the full thing. Here, I'm more specifically going to talk about why it has the impact on me that it has. Also, what I would appreciate with this episode is you commenting down below what lessons you have learned and impacted you in 2021, right? That can be stuff that I helped teach you or just any, from books, from life, anything like that. It doesn't have to be specifically a top 10 list, just anything that has stood out to you that you really learned in this year, okay? Because I would like to learn as well, right? Anyway, without further ado, here is my top 10 list. And mind you, this was really hard to put in terms of a full ranking. So, this is in no particular order necessarily, okay? So there is that caveat, okay? Number one, the idea of what's scary versus something that you actually shouldn't do, right? This idea came to me, I was invited to be a board member on the Financially Fit Foundation this year. And at the time I was thinking, do I have time for this? Can I commit to this? And yada, 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 right? But really what it was just excuses not to do it versus me not supposed to be doing it, right? And so there's our negative creative mind just puts up these reasons why we shouldn't do something because it seems scary, right? When in fact we should, we're just scared. Now, of course, there are times when you shouldn't do something because, in your gut, in your heart of hearts, it's not the right thing, it's detracting from something, or it could put you in a bad situation. Then yes, you have to kind of really listen to that. And it can be a fine line, but that's why this was an important lesson for me to learn and to quiet that voice. And when, opportunity does come, take it, even though I might be scared, of putting myself out there type of thing, right? So that was a big lesson. The other thing was influence versus control, these two ideas, right? Because in self-help, there's the idea that you can only control yourself ultimately, right? And yes, that is true, but you do have influence over the world, how you go about and carry yourself has an impact, right? Whether you realize it or not. And so why not have an intention behind that influence and how you yield it, right? So that was a big lesson. And like I said, all of these are, linked to in the description in terms of the full episode. So don't feel like you're getting, I'm skimping out on these and that you're not getting the full lesson. They're all available to you. The third one comes from Byron Katie, right? She's an incredible person. Many people have called her enlightened. She's like, I don't know if I'm enlightened. I just know what makes me happy and stuff like that, right? And just incredible human being. And the lesson is, if you argue against reality, you suffer. Just pure and simple, right? That a universal truth of if you argue against reality, you suffer. So, and this is a hard one for people to really swallow because it can come off really insensitive, but it's not. When you really think about it, it's not, right? Here's a very extreme yet everyday sort of example of this. If someone loses somebody in their life and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe it, they're gone and they're grieving, things like that. Well, that grief really is an unacceptance of that reality that person is gone. That's it. You have to accept the reality that person, at least in their physical form, is gone. And again, that sounds quite insensitive to a lot of people, but it's not really. It's just the fact of the matter. And when you accept that reality, you can move about in a different way. And again, like Byron Katie, if you really study her, if you look at her, she's one of the kindest, sweetest people you'll ever meet. And so it doesn't make you cold. It actually just realigns you with what is real. And so you can deal with that reality versus suffering from it, right? Which is an illusion. It's just a fake reality. It's made up in your mind. So that was a big one. The fourth one, if you were born with it, keep it. If you weren't, let it go. Meaning, when you were born, did you have jealousy? No, you did not, right? You had a kind, pure heart. So if you weren't born with jealousy, get rid of it. Somewhere along your life, you learned how to be jealous, right? It's a programming. Whereas happiness you were born with, right? It's an inherent programming versus one that was like trained into you. And so just a very simple thing to kind of consider about your life. If you were born with it, keep it. If you weren't, get rid of it. Very powerful lesson for me in 2021. This was an interesting one. Only amateurs focus on strategy. And the reason that it's an interesting one, because I am someone who loves to study strategy, right? Loves to study processes and so forth. And there's a benefit to that. But at the end of the day, the only real way is to do it, right? Like, for example, even like the director of the latest Mission Impossible movies, he essentially comes up, him and Tom Cruise, they come up with the action scene that they want and then create story around that, essentially, right? And on paper, it shouldn't work. And yet it does. And so ultimately, it's only by doing that you create anything in life, right? And there's going to be the naysayers and so forth, but that's where the great poem about the man in the ring, the man in the arena comes in, which is basically all that really matters is the man in the arena. Everyone else will have their say about it, but, you as the man in the arena, right, this is a symbolic thing, could be also literal, are taking that shot, right, and you're putting in that work. And strategy, in some ways, can get in the way of that because it can hinder you of like, okay, well, this is not the correct way of going about it, right? So only amateurs focus on strategy. That was a big lesson. And it's a little bit more nuanced than I'm making it out to be. But again, that's why I did the full episode, and it's available for you to check out. The next one, stop trying to convince people who won't be your audience, right? So it's interesting because I experienced this in my real life, obviously, where so like I'll get phone calls, right, from actual people, telemarketers and so forth, and they'll be pitching me something. And I'll literally tell them, no, I'm not interested, and to the point I've gotten like, no, I'm not interested, and quite frankly, I'm not going to be your customer ever. So please take me off your list. And yet they continue to want to, call me and try to convince me. I'm like, this is not for me. And so they're not only wasting my time, but they're wasting their time because I'm not going to be a customer. But it was very eye-opening because so many people, I've done this, and I know many people that do this. We try to convince all the wrong people to be interested in something that we're doing or creating or whatever the case. And it's like, no, stop focusing on that. There's 8 billion people in the world. There's an audience out there for what it is you have. You just have to find it. And stop wasting time on people that aren't it and go find it. Okay? That was a big one. This is based off of a Beatles quote. Time you enjoy wasting is not wasted. That was a good one, right? Because, people tell us all the time, like, oh, you're just wasting time and this and that or whatever, right? When they're being critical of certain choices, right? For example, like, let's say video games or watching movies or whatever it may be, right? And ultimately, these are life choices. And as long as you're happy with life choices, and as long as you enjoy them, then it's not time wasted, right? So who's to tell you otherwise? So I think that's an important lesson. The other thing, this is kind of about one aspect of how to maintain humility and go about the world in a kinder way. Identify people based on their values, not their societal roles. I think in essence, the core of it is treat everyone nice, but it does go deeper than that. But yeah, an important lesson all the same. Consider the domino. This was a big one for me. So this stems from the idea, people will always say like the domino effect, if you just hit one, then boom, it creates this domino effect and you can affect many, many people, right? But this is the macro version of it. And when we talk about influence and the things we can control and, just kind of our power in life, what we don't really consider is the individual domino. Because the only role of a single domino is to affect the domino directly in front of it. And yet, we have this, call it a narcissistic, egotistical, this idea, grand illusion that we have to, it's all or nothing. We want big or it doesn't matter. So whatever cause we take up in life, there's this insidious thing within us that we have to constantly stomp down to say hey, just because I'm not going to be the one that solves world hunger doesn't mean I can't have a positive effect, right? And also, a lot of times people don't take up a cause simply because it seems overwhelming of I can't solve world hunger by myself. And it's again, consider the domino. The role of that one domino is just to affect the domino directly in front of it. And so, for us, I think we lessen the power that we have within ourselves by saying that, we need to solve everything, when in fact just affect one person in a positive way, and boom, that's what creates the domino effect. Versus thinking we just need to do it all. We don't. So consider the domino. And the other thing, the last one, consider nouns as verbs. Okay? I think many of us take whatever adjective, whatever quality, and we think it's a stationary thing, as opposed to talent, right? Talent is a noun or skill set or whatever, and we think we have it or we don't. When in fact, the only way to showcase any of that is to have them as verbs, right? To showcase talent, you have to be doing something, right? And so, getting away from the mindset of stasis, meaning not doing anything, and getting into an action space of doing X, Y, and Z. So whatever you consider good values in life, exemplify them as verbs, right? Because in order to be those things, you need to do those things. So that was another big lesson that impacted me this year. So these are my top 10 lessons of this year that have benefited me, that have stood with me. But as I said at the top of the episode, I'm very curious to hear, what resonated with you this year, whether mine or, again, your life, somebody else's work, doesn't matter. I'm just curious, right? So please comment down below or hit me up on social media at Svitek. Also, as we head into 2022, I will obviously continue doing these episodes and these lessons for you, and they will continue to be free. But if you want more direct interaction, so that way, there's ways I can help you more specifically, consider joining my Patreon page at patreon.com/PhilSvitek. There's various tiers of support, and those various tiers get you, more and more things as you increase in terms of the tier level. Also, if you just appreciate what I do in general, consider supporting my art, whether it's my movies, my books, merchandise. All the links are down below. Thank you as always. Appreciate you. It's been a wonderful 2021 in spite of all the circumstances, and I look forward to 2022.